That's when my camera goes off as soon as you do that.
All right, we're gonna get started because I'm all about starting on time. As soon as I admit Brad. Now Brad's in. Okay, let's get this show on the road. So thank you guys for coming to the FSBO class today. Before we talk about this class and like what it's about, we are seeing a lot of people in this market today that are considering or have considered going the FSBO route. So this class is so important because of that fact, I think. And then also it's just all updated new material. So I'm really excited to give it to you guys. As we dig into the material, just remember that when considering working with FSBOs, there are 6 possible income streams that come from that. So just wanted to remind you guys that. We'll get into it, but let's dive in. So what is this course about? So FSBO Boot Camp teaches the 5-step follow-up method, which is a very complete and like non-threatening approach for working for sale by owners. You learn how to proactively approach them, follow up, and close FSBOs in a way that adds value to everyone. Before we logged into the class today, or actually after we log out of the class today, I'll shoot you guys the new book so you guys can have it and pick and choose what you want to work with. And then also just make sure you kind of check it out in your downtime because there's lots of really cool stuff in there. So let's look at the no do have sheet next. So this is the no do have sheet for this process. And we have these in almost every class that we teach. It's everything you should know, do, or have for your particular process. So this process is the FSBO process. You can somewhat break it down with everything you need to know, do, and have. I mean, this is just an example. So feel free to incorporate these into all your strategies and then pick and choose what you want to put into your no do have sheets. That way it can act as like a checklist for you guys. Let's talk about why we visit FSBOs though. So can you tell me why an agent would consider working with a FSBO?
To possibly get the listing.
Possibly get the listing. Yep. That's a good one. Anybody else? Well, a lot of agents consider working with FSBOs not only to get the listing, like Jean said, but because 100% of FSBOs have kind of an immediate desire to sell their home. This coupled with the fact, like I said, that there are 6 possible ways for you to generate income from FSBOs, it makes it kind of like one of the top dollar productive generation sources. And we don't really think about that when we're considering working with them initially, but when we break it down, there's actually a lot of revenue that could be made with working with FSBO owners. What kind of advice would you give to agents before considering working with FSBOs? I know Brandon and Kyle, you probably are two that have a lot of experience with FSBOs. So could you tell me kind of what advice you'd offer?
We got their microphones off.
Yeah, they might be on the phone, which is totally fine. Some advice that I would recommend is, have the understanding about going into FSBOs with just wanting to be in the right mentality. Again, a lot of FSBO owners, they're typically pretty discouraged with agents, and it's probably because they've been burned by an agent before. So just keep that in mind that you kind of have to go in with a little bit tougher skin and work them similar to how we work expireds. Because most of the time when you go door knocking on a FSBO or you're calling a FSBO, they already have that pre-notion in their mind that agents just kind of aren't worth their time. So they might be a little bit more stubborn or harder to work with. And you just need to keep that positivity up and keep offering them just items of value and getting them on that channel with you, that FSBO channel, that right mindset. Can anybody tell me how you would kind of describe FSBO owners today?
I watch too much HGTV.
They do watch too much HGTV. You're right. They also probably are pretty into like the internet as far as what they see from like Zillow or Trulia or whatever.
They think they can get a lot. They think that the market's so hot they don't need to list. Which
Absolutely.
The problem is it's tough to argue that when they're like, oh well, we just saw 2 other for sale by owners go under contract, and you're like, yeah, they did. You're right.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. They usually have kind of a price already in mind, and sometimes that's a little bit higher, or they are kind of stuck on maybe some features of their home, like, I use golden screws in my drywall. Well, buyers don't care about that. So they just have like all of those intermixed kind of within their mentality, and it's just kind of up to you to show them, the facts of the market, the facts about their home, and just keep bringing stuff of value. That's the biggest thing with FSBOs, is offering things of value. So let's talk about those income streams that I was talking about. So as you can see from this slide, FSBOs provide a lot of opportunity for work, like we were talking about. So let's talk about why homeowners go the FSBO route. Why do you feel that is the reason? Like, why do they want to do a FSBO? I know we kind of touched a little bit on it, but
Get the most money out of their home.
Yeah.
That's the main one.
Yep, that's absolutely right. It's kind of cheaper for them because they don't have to pay agent's commission. They can get more money. They also maybe don't have any trust for agents or their agent services. So those are all great examples. And you can see these, so I won't go through each of them. You guys can read them and write them down. They're also in the book. But like I said, these 6 possible streams of income just offer a lot of opportunity for you guys.
Hey,
So,
Jalen,
yeah.
I had one the other day that they had no problem with realtors at all, but their issue was they knew the value of their home and they did not want an appraiser because 3 different appraisers could get 3 different price points for a home, and they did not want an appraiser to ruin the sale of their home.
Right. Which is also a good point. And especially with appraisers right now, a lot of appraisers are even backed up. So like they're not getting to, the properties
That's really weird, because whether they want to or not, the lender's going to have an appraisal. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I always tell people about appraisal is whether they're a buyer or a seller, it's tough for something not to appraise, and if it doesn't appraise, then we can get another appraisal, or we'll just
they wanted a cash only deal.
Oh wow.
Good luck.
Well, good luck with that.
I only want someone to pay cash for my home, and I don't want to get it appraised. And I'm like, oh, so your home's overpriced, and it's overpriced.
Right.
Yeah.
So that
and that doesn't happen all the time. I'd say I'm like Kyle. That's kind of weird. You don't really hear a lot about that, especially when, I get the cash thing, but a lot of, lenders are going to have that anyway. So I agree with Kyle. Like if they're stuck on appraisals, just keep offering the fact that you can get multiple opinions and try to, lead them down that path instead of just, I hate appraisals. I don't want appraisals.
Yeah. And you can, sometimes I know when I first started calling them, it was like, I want every single for sale by owner to list with me. And after about calling a bunch of them and trying to get appointments, it was like, if these people aren't super motivated, it isn't even worth it.
Yeah. I would agree with that too. And like I was saying with that point too, it's mostly due to like the perception of value that a homeowner would go kind of that FSBO route too. So you always kind of want to overcome that bad perception, allow the homeowner to self-discover, differentiate yourself from the competition. You want to be different from the very beginning. So going in with that mind that, like Kyle said, even if you're not talking about it and you're like, I'm going to land every FSBO, change that mentality to where you're just going to build that relationship with the FSBO. Not, I'm going to go in and I'm going to land it which is also important. I'm not saying it's not, but just offering that relationship building is kind of the path that you want to, or the mentality you want to think about instead of just landing it. Because the more that you're bringing perception of value and the more that you're offering things of value and building that relationship, the more these people are going to kind of come around and work with you, if that makes sense. So from this list, what do you try to do the most of right now when working with FSBOs?
Get their listing.
Get their listing, right?
So sell the FSBOs home, number one. Yeah. And honestly, you know, listings, that's kind of where the money is. So obviously that's a good, you know, like one to think about. But you also have these other ones, you know, taking FSBOs as taking the FSBOs listing, working the FSBO as a buyer, getting referrals from them, and providing the service for a fee. So there's just a lot of different ways to go around it. Which one do you feel is like the hardest?
Get their listing.
Get the listing. Yeah. I would say that's probably the hardest. I think the second hardest would be working the FSBO as a buyer, you know, talking about if you bring buyers to them, how that's all going to play out. Sometimes that can get a little tougher as well. So I would definitely say those two are probably the hardest. But let's look at finding FSBOs. Let's talk about that. So just to recap, most sellers go FSBO because they want to save money. Most of the time, it's a perception of value like we talked about. And FSBOs don't think a realtor is kind of worth the commission, period. So it's kind of up to you to show that the more importantly, bring them value and things that they can actually use to potentially help them sell their home. So this differentiates yourself like we were talking about and allows you to keep building that relationship. So the first thing that we talk about is just, you know, finding them. And the first source that we talk about is through driving by their house. So doing a drive-by, routinely driving around their home base and looking for yard signs is kind of the best way to find FSBOs right now. And it kind of proactively moves those relationships for you too, because you're immediately putting yourself face to face with them, and your competition isn't going to do that. Like, I don't think or know of really any of our other outside agents who are routinely driving around, routinely door knocking and putting themselves face to face without trying to contact them first, like via phone or text message or something else. So don't be afraid to put that in your toolbox and just go drive around and see who you can talk to.
Kaylin, the problem with doing that, like, there's no problem like driving around looking for them now, but some people are still so sketched out over the COVID stuff
that is true.
That's kind of a thing that we all kind of have to take into account, because some people care, some people don't, you know, and you can come up and be like, oh, hi, I'm Brandon. Nice to meet you. And they're like, don't touch me, COVID-19. Freaked out, put a door in your face. So.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that COVID has an impact right now, but I still think that if you're proactive and you're considering that drive-by plan, you know, if you are prepared ahead of time with, you know, masks, maybe even some gloves, maybe even carry like a hand sanitizer on you or something. I think that if you just initiate the conversation on their doorstep while keeping a safe distance, it should be fairly okay. I mean, obviously you utilize your best judgment for things like that, guys, but I definitely wouldn't discount it, is all I'm saying. I think that people are wanting to get out. They're wanting to interact with other people. So I definitely don't think that it's a total loss of an attempt. But as you can kind of see by this chart, the class like kind of teaches you how to define your home base first. And you kind of want to do that by establishing the radius for a 2 or 4 or 6 mile circle. So you kind of just want to pick around and expand it just a little bit as you're considering driving around. And according to this content, it would allow for more consistent follow-up too. It allows you to keep on top of your game for a follow-up process if you're going to do the area route, you know. So right now, and like Brandon said, you might not be doing a drive-by plan right now because of COVID, but if you have, what did that drive-by plan look like? How were you determining where you were going, and how were your conversations? Okay, if you don't want to answer.
Were you talking to me?
I was just talking to anybody.
Yeah, I started during COVID, so I haven't done that.
Yeah, that's okay.
I pulled number. I've drove around and found the for sale by owner signs, and then like written down the numbers, and then called them later.
Right. That's what I've done.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have gone that route too. And again, nothing wrong with that. The next question I have though is if you're driving by and you're taking down their number and you're going to make contact with them, what are you kind of noticing before you're making contact with the owners about the property?
As you look it up on the county website,
Mm-hmm.
get whatever information I can from there.
Yeah, that's a good source.
See if they have it on Facebook or whatever, or Zillow. Check to see if there's anything on that, and then use all that information so you have a little bit to go in with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd also recommend if you are kind of in front of the property, even if you're not going and door knocking, you're just kind of surveying before you go back to the office and call. Maybe take any notice of like curb appeal or anything about maybe the neighborhood. Just take some notes about just different things that you notice, because all of those things that you take notes on could be a possible thing that you could bring an item of value back to them with. So don't be afraid to, as you're sitting in your car, maybe looking at things, like write down if, their entryway isn't very cleaned up or spruced up, or if if anything's wrong with the curb appeal or just the outside, that might be something that you could offer to them later on down the road. So taking notes is powerful, is my point. So let's look and talk about some other sources for finding FSBOs. There's lots of other ways. I know, Gene, you touched on several of them where you can find FSBOs. Have any of you guys used any of these to find or locate FSBOs? What kind of works the best? I know, Kyle, you are really hesitant about Craigslist, if I remember right.
Yeah, I don't call a whole bunch anymore. I mean, that was the only way that I was picking up people in the beginning, but I think that Craigslist is tough just because, I don't know, it seemed to be less quality home was on Craigslist. Zillow is good. And just driving and seeing them. I mean, if I had to preview all of our listings before starting, so I would just call them right as I was sitting outside their house and do the, hey, do you mind if I preview your house? I'm actually sitting here right now, and I don't even have to go inside. I can just look through the windows if that's okay with you. And then they say, then they ask about the buyer, and that's the buyer that doesn't exist. But it's got to do what you got to do to eat. So
yeah, and that totally makes sense. The next question too, Kyle, if you don't mind me asking you this as well, just because you've done it for a while as far as FSBOs, are there any other sources that you know of to kind of avoid using to find them?
So I have actually, what's funny is for sell by owners will list a lot of times because their friend just sold or their friend just listed for sell by owner. So one of the questions that I ask is, and it's different every time of how well the call goes, but I'll say, what made you decide to list for sell by owner? Have you had luck with it in the past? And not every time, but I would say a good 40% of it is I've done it before, or Joe, my neighbor, is listed for sell by owner, and he's not even online, and he doesn't even have a sign in the yard. But Joe, the neighbor, said, oh, yeah, I've got my place for sale by owner, and I'm thinking about doing it. And then they puts it in their head. So that's happened way more than I would have thought.
I love how you ask the question like ahead of time to see kind of where that thought process occurred to them. I think that's a big question that we don't think about asking. So hopefully you guys wrote that down. That's pretty good.
Yeah, because then it will tell you the biggest thing is that if sometimes paying the commission isn't the biggest reason they did. Sometimes they know their house is overpriced. Sometimes they know their house is a piece of shit. And so if you can kind of vet that in the beginning, then, you know, or they're not ready to sell. It's for sale for the right price, you know. So, and I'm not gonna, you know, put a whole bunch of time into them. So that's kind of the reasoning for that is if they say it's all about commission, then I know they're serious and that this might be a good prospect.
That's great, Kyle. I love that advice. I think we need to do more of that too, just the power of questions. So let's look at the process that we talk about in this class for just working FSBOs, that 5-step follow-up system. So to be successful with FSBOs, like we've talked about, you must be proactive and you must follow up. Those are like the two key things. And this course shows you the 5-step follow-up system here, as you can see on this particular slide. So in your guys' experience, what proves to be the best thing an agent can do for a FSBO?
Show their value.
Show their value. Absolutely. If not showing your own personal value as an agent, bringing them something of value. And then what tools are kind of in your tool belt right now that you would offer as an item of a value to a FSBO?
CMAs.
CMAs, yep.
I pulled from like the first FSBO class I did with you was the offering them something like a seller's disclosure. I actually ended up getting one of my listings because of that.
Yep, seller's disclosure is another good one. I'd also consider just any information about the property. Like if you can pull up just some different history, you can go in there with just a better understanding of how it's played out, not only in the market, but just for them in general. And you could even do, like you said, disclosures, or if you, like I said before, if you've taken notes, something that applies to like a particular note that you've taken, could be, like I said, the front door entryway, or maybe they should put flowers on the mailbox. I mean, I don't know, just anything that you can think of that could be just an added benefit to them. Do you guys create like a FSBO guide or a FSBO packet of any kind? You know how we have like the listing packet and the selling packets. Do you guys do anything for FSBOs?
I always say I'm going to, and I haven't, but I think that would be a really good idea. Same thing as Brandon was saying with the seller's disclosures. It just, like, you know, triggers that law of reciprocity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you're in luck because I got some good examples now for those in this class.
What I do is, like, if I have a listing meeting with them or something, like if I get them to the point where they're willing to meet and talk about it, I get as much background info as I can on the property and them. That way, because a lot of these people think they know more and that they can do just as good a job. So like we had talked the last time about showing them your knowledge base. And then when they start asking you what you mean, or, oh, I've never heard that. What do you mean by that? And then you see them just start nodding their head. And then you go into details about all the background information you pulled on it. When they start quizzing you just to test you, that goes so much farther than people know. It helps a lot.
I agree, Brandon. It definitely does help a lot. What's some things to remember about the competition in FSBOs? I like this question. Okay, so things to remember about the competition in FSBOs is 50 to 100% of the competition will stop messing with a FSBO within 1 to 4 weeks. And this follow-up system is going to take you through 8 weeks, maybe even a little bit less, but it's going to tell you how to follow up consistently when all the other competition is going to drop out well before that. So the biggest point, every time you get face-to-face with a FSBO, you must give them something of value. That is something that will help them in their attempts to sell their home themselves. So like I said before, change that mentality when working with a FSBO to go in and land that listing, even though it might be in the back of your head. And yeah, that is the end goal. But if you present yourself in a way that's just like, hey, I'm just here to help. You know, I'm not going to try to be your agent, but if you would like me to, I definitely will. But I just want to keep bringing you things to help you. It really does make a difference. So step one, this is the initial test. We have now found the FSBO and we're ready to have that first conversation, either by knocking on the door or with a phone call. This particular example is more for like door knocking. So thinking about door knocking, although some of you haven't had the chance to do that because of COVID yet, but when you're imagining it, for example, what do you think you would take for that first door knock? Do maybe a seller's disclosure if you can, or just any property information. That would be like probably one of the first things I would recommend taking. Also, when they're answering the door, they do a little script here. You know, hi, my name is Kaylin. I'm with Remax Lake of the Ozarks, and I noticed your home is for sale. Would you mind if I come in, view the home, and took some room measurements so I can add it to my for sale by owner inventory? So again, you're not asking to come in and talk with them to get the listing. You're not trying to spill them through everything. You're just there because you're interested in the property. And most of the time, they're going to want you to come look at it because you might have a buyer, you might know somebody. That's going to be what's in their head. So what are you guys saying when they open the door? Or what would you say? Are you trying to build rapport? I mean, would it be something along those lines?
I would try to get in the home. I wouldn't try, I don't know if I'd say that, can I take some measurements of your home? Because then that might lead them to falsely believe that you have a buyer right then that was wanting it already. I'll say you might.
I think it's a little too forward to ask to come in their house so soon. We really haven't established a rapport with them yet either.
Which is kind of going back to this question, Gene, just like they're answering the door. And obviously you want to build some rapport before asking if you can just come in. Like, obviously they want to know who you are and why you're there and feel like they can trust you.
Yeah. And I think, you know, maybe use the, you know, you see the home, you take up for what their measurements are or what you found maybe from previous listings or something like that. But to ask to come in, I think I would use that on one of my follow-ups. Maybe my second follow-up, you know, hey, I'm not sure about this measurement, you know, can I come in and take measurements?
Yeah. And you know, like Brandon said, it might not have to be measurements. You can say, I would love to see it. Just walk around. You know, I'm an agent and I know a lot about different properties. I see lots of different properties and I would just like to come survey it for my inventory or, you know, whatever. So.
Well, and if you do it like that too, then you could start the conversation of getting them to talk about their property. Then you could ask them stuff like, well, if they go, well, why do you want to come in and look at it if you don't have a buyer? Well, you know, I'm fairly versed in the market out here. You know, I'd like to just come in and see if the, you know, the pricing is justified before I showed it to any of my buyers. You know, what made you settle on this price point? You know, I see it's been on the market for a while. I drive by here all the time. Like, why do you think it's not selling? What's going on? And then that, even though it's stereotypical, like what comes out of the momentum classes, that stuff works.
Yeah. And I love that question too, Brandon, how you said, you know, I noticed that it's been on the market, just kind of wanted to see why you priced it. Those are all great questions. And getting back to the measurement thing too, maybe just, you know, can you just give me a tour of your home? I'd love to see it. It looks like really nice property. Yeah, just anything like that. What do you guys think about, or what would you say if they said no? Like you built rapport, you felt like it was going good, and then they just didn't want to let you inside.
I mean, some people are just unreasonable. You can't win them all. You know, even if it was someone that was willing to do like an authorization to show where you get half the commission, if they're going to be unreasonable and not even let you go on and tour it, what makes you think I want to take my buyer there to show them your house? You know?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And if a FSBO says no, you can't come in, just offer them, like I said, the seller's disclosure, whatever item you brought for value. Say something along the lines of, I wish you great success in the sale of your home. Here's my card. If there's anything you ever need, I can do for you, or anyone you know, please just don't hesitate to call me. But believe it or not, though, even if they say no and you didn't get in that time, you still accomplished your goal with just getting face-to-face with them. That's all you want to do, is just get face-to-face with them so they can put a face with the name, because you're going to keep following up even if they say no. Does that make sense?
Do you guys ever ask them, like, if they have their own flyer with photos and stuff made up?
That's a great question, Gene. I would.
I've never done that.
I've never done it either, but it just kind of hit me that, you know, well, hey, okay, you don't want to let me in. So, well, what do you have to tell me about the house? Do you have a flyer made up? Do you have information that maybe I could show to my clients that may be interested? And then we can
Could
discuss.
I find that info online? Maybe would be another.
Yeah, I would ask if they got like a Zillow listing or something. I've been there. Right.
Those are all.
If it just is a sign that's on like a lot, you can't. How are you going to pull that up?
Exactly. You got to call that. You're not going to.
Yeah, you call them and you say like, "Hey, we're trying to see some information. Is this on Zillow? Can I pull it up?" "Oh yeah, it is." And then you look at it and go ahead.
Let's switch gears and talk about calling now. So the thing to remember about calling FSBOs is it's far easier for FSBOs to reject you over the phone. However, if you have a situation like a by appointment only sign, or the homeowner was not home, a phone call should be tried. I always say, anytime that you guys are picking up the phone, there's always value in a call. So don't be afraid to call. Like I said, there's always value in it. So if you are calling a FSBO to try and schedule a face-to-face meeting, what does that dialogue kind of sound like? Now, I know you guys are at least calling.
The first time I call, it's not necessarily to start a face-to-face meeting, because the first time you call, you get a lot of the general impressions of the person very quickly. So for sale by owners are not shy to tell you they're not going to list with you, just flat out, hey, you know, I always introduce myself like, hi, my name is Brandon. I work with Remax Lake of the Ozarks. And they're saying, why the hell are you calling me? Or I don't want to list my home. Or some will be nice and they'll be amenable and actually listen to what you're saying and take the time to answer your questions and ask you questions. Getting them to talk. If they're not amenable and they're just flat out don't want to talk about anything, then that's fine. But if I can get them to talk, then you can normally get them, you know, even if they say no, sometimes they'd be willing to meet with you just to see what kind of value you can bring them.
Right. And you're absolutely right with that, Brandon. The thing that I love about this particular slide and this information is everything that we talked about on the door knocking slide before this applies to this screen. It's the same kind of scripts, same kind of questions that you can ask, offering to make an appointment so you can come add it to your inventory, or have a tour so you just know what's going on. Gene, same questions that you brought up that were great. You know, I would love to just get a tour. If you don't want to meet me or whatever, can I find it online? Do you have any marketing material? Just all of that still applies when you're on that initial first phone call. So don't be afraid to swap them, whether it's, you know, in person or over the phone.
Hey, Kaylin, I also too, like, even if they say no to meeting or listing, I always ask if they would be willing to fill out an authorization to show. Always, every single time, because even if they don't list with me, then I could still generate revenue off their property regardless whether I list it or not.
Absolutely. That's another great point, because at least you have that authorization to show their property, which is great. Great idea. That actually I don't think has come up before. So good thought process on that. Excuse me. When you guys have them on the phone, what are you working with in front of you to, capture that information?
Pen and paper, and like I have my FSBO list on Excel that we've talked about, but I write down everything I just on one sheet or whatever while I'm on the phone with them, and then after the call, I always transfer everything over to my electronic stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would recommend, like when we go through listing conversion, we always have our pre-listing questionnaire. I would recommend kind of the same thing, but for FSBOs, you can tailor it more to a FSBO if you want to, but you're going to kind of try to capture the same information anyway. So definitely create one if you don't have one. It saves you time and also speeds up the conversation too, because you're not just, with the blank piece of paper trying to remember all the questions you want answers to. Get it all typed out ahead of time, so you're not wasting so much of your time on the phone or theirs. It just is a time saver, if anything else, and something that you can look back on if you're continuing to bring items of value in their follow-up and stuff. Just making notes like that really helps save time. Are you guys asking them for their contact information, so when you get off the call, you can send them an item of value to like their email and stuff too? I'd recommend doing that if you're not doing that. Just any kind of, it could be a text message, an email address, just anything that they would provide to you. And you can literally tell them, I understand that you're frustrated with agents in the area. You might be bombarded a lot. But my only intention is just to help you in the sale of your home. So I just want to send you just some information that you can use, not that I want to use with you. Does that make sense? Let's talk about how you landed an appointment. Like say you landed it and you're getting inside the home. So you've knocked or you called and you're invited inside. What are you guys saying when they invite you in? And accommodate you? I mean, obviously you're probably doing a home tour, right? Building rapport. It kind of switches you to that listing conversion mode, correct?
A lot of fluff. Oh, this is so nice. Oh, how beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the opposite.
What do you say, Brandon? I'm
the opposite. You compliment them on their home, but then if you're not realistic with them and tell them, something, these are super fancy, but it's really like IKEA stuff like that. It's not going to help you at all.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they do have misconceptions of stuff that brings value to their property, and if you're not realistic with them, then you're not bringing them value, and people pick up on that. Like if you don't you just gotta be honest with them. That's the biggest thing. Just be honest with them. Don't lie to them and tell them that their home's super nice and it's going to sell for a ton of money when you know that it's not nice, and they're out of their minds for thinking it's going to sell for that much.
Right.
And I understand that. And by fluff, I mean by the things that you should be fluffing up, not things that shouldn't be.
I got you.
Like you said, be honest. Well, yeah, I don't know. That might need some work there, or yeah, that's a little old. It's gonna need replacement. Yeah, I understand the honesty part on that a lot.
What I like about this slide is it kind of goes back to your initial reason. So whether that be you're going in to take measurements, for your inventory. Let's just use that one because that one's in the book, but you guys gave a lot of other great ideas. This one is just kind of walking around and it's explaining, it's been in my experience that room measurements are really important to buyers. Okay, let's reverse it. Let's talk about just going in and getting a tour. Well, it's been my experience that the more that I can uncover for buyers, the easier the process is. You do that. or just I'm identifying, the top 3 things that buyers are considering today. I wanted to see if your home met those top 3 things. I mean, there's a million ways that you could, transition that dialogue to work for that purpose of you coming in, whatever that purpose was or question was to get you in the door. Just remember to keep that purpose in your mind and keep structuring your dialogue towards that goal, because your goal right now when you're inside the home isn't to start an immediate listing conversation. It's just to put a face with a name, get you in front of them, and start building any rapport that you can, because you're going to get ready to have this closing dialogue and leave them, and then you're going to do nothing but just follow up, follow up, follow up, and it's all going to come together and make a big difference. So let's look at that closing dialogue. I know I'm kind of going a little fast, but we have a lot more to look at too. So I want to make sure that you guys see all this new stuff as well. So closing visit number 1, like I said, you're offering them that item of value, and then you're just kind of asking, have you prepared a seller's disclosure if that's what you're going to go with? Most of the time FSBOs are like, what's that? Or maybe they don't know. And you can use this dialogue or mix it up, but it's basically a notice that discloses the current condition of your home. You can throw in, like Kyle said, the lending thing. Most lenders, they'll want maybe a seller's disclosure and some other additional paperwork to consider, just however you want to do it, but make sure it's comfortable for you. FSBOs might come back with, the condition of my home is fine. And you can say, well, I'm sure it is. However, state law requires you to supply each potential buyer with a copy. It's not a lie. And it might be something that they didn't consider. Boom, there's your item of value that just made a difference to them because they didn't know that. Does that make sense? You always want to make sure these items of value are going to kind of have that boom impact, because they're probably not thinking about stuff like that. So after that, you're just going to close it. You're going to, thank them for their time, whatever time that they gave you. And you can hand them your business card. Hopefully you got some contact information, and then you're going to go back to the office and start your follow-up. This is just an example of an inventory sheet. This is something that you can take and use if you want to as you're walking around getting a home tour. Or maybe you could tailor it to a phone conversation as well. Those are questions that you could maybe ask them. So just know that this is a new inventory sheet that you guys can use. And like I said, after this class, I'll send it all to you guys, so you'll have it. And now we're going to look at stage 2, which is the first follow-up. So you're going to consider hand delivering a FSBO guide, or again, another item of value. So if the FSBO isn't home, put the follow-up material in an envelope and place it at their front door. Don't tape it to the door, because people don't like that. I would just place it at their front door, or hopefully they have a big mailbox or something. Consider putting like your business card in there as well, so they know it's from you. Maybe a handwritten note, because those always work really well. People appreciate the time that it takes you to handwrite something. So maybe a handwritten note. Then you want to call to verify a little bit later that the FSBO received the information. So don't be afraid to do a follow-up call if they weren't home. If they were home, great. You're again face-to-face. You're just handing them something. You could do something along the lines of, I just happened to be in your neighborhood and I thought about you. Here's this item of value. They're not going to know any different. So after that, you're just going to do the same kind of closing dialogue and go back to the office, and you're going to wait for the next time that you follow up. You can also use this time to do a thank you note or a video for that next interaction. So you could send them an email or a phone call, video, text, just anything, and just say, hey, I know I stopped by unannounced. I really appreciate your time. Just any small thing like that's going to add value as well. Step 3 is after 7 days. So again, these are all in like 7-day increments. You want to give them time. You don't want to be pushy or annoying. So time it out appropriately, and you're going to really know what that appropriate time limit is after interacting with them. I mean, you're going to tell if they're like people that really just don't want to be bothered, or people that don't really care. So just use your best judgment. But the book says 7 days is a pretty good number. You're going to go back again and hand deliver another item of value. This book suggests at this point, you just did like a FSBO guide. Now you're going to do a FSBO guide to money. And the FSBO guide to money and all these FSBO guides are at the end of the book, so you guys can look at them later. But this one is kind of a guide to all of what comes financially with the FSBO process. And again, if the FSBO is not home, put the material wherever you can, front door or in the mailbox, personal note or card. And then again, call up, verify that they got it, and then just send another thank you video or text message or something. And then you're going to do it again for step 4 in another 7 days. You're going to go back. Maybe this time consider a FSBO guide or a checklist booklet that kind of prepares them for everything that they need to do to sell their home, and then maybe everything that they need to do to prepare for a moving day. Those are all great examples. And then again, same process. If it's not home, leave it there, do a note or something of value. I've even seen agents do like a small gift. And like you said, Brandon, right now with COVID, that could just be a little bottle of hand sanitizer or maybe one of those really cheap masks. It doesn't have to cost you a whole bunch, but you could take it a little step further and do something like that as well. Again, you're going to call and verify that they received it if you didn't hand it to them personally, and then send them another thank you card or video or text message. And then step 5 is after another 7 days, and this is when you begin your follow-up calls, not so much going back and doing it face-to-face. If you are still around at this step 5, which is usually around the 8th week, you've built that relationship. It's formed, and the FSBO has self-discovered you and that you're different from the competition because you're still there. You're actively trying to help them, which is awesome. And this time it kind of suggests to try and get into that listing conversation. So once you follow it up about 4 or 5 times, then start transitioning that dialogue to see if they'll sit down and go through the listing process with you. And most of the time they probably will, unless they're just those FSBO owners that are just stubborn and are going to continue to do it anyway, which are those people that you don't want to have that win-win relationship with anyway. Do you guys have any questions about that or any comments? Anything you kind of tried a little differently? You're going to kind of repeat this too, weekly until the house is either listed or sold. So keep following up, especially at stage 5. Like I said, keep trying to get into that listing conversation or listing appointment at that point. I really think that it'll help. And I love this dialogue too. It's been the same on every slide. Just, how did it go this week? Did you have any showings? If you did, tell me what, you got as feedback. Just any questions like that can keep giving you opportunities for more items of value, but also just giving you extra feedback so you can keep knowing how to appropriately follow up with them or what to bring to the table or maybe where they are in the process. So don't be afraid to answer or ask a whole bunch of questions. So now we're going to talk about closing FSBOs to a listing conversation. Again, that's the goal at stage 5 is hopefully they've agreed to sit down with you. So when communicating with the FSBO, be on the lookout for some communication clues like I was just talking about. And they're on this slide. So why hasn't your home sold? Or why hasn't our home sold? Shouldn't we drop the price? What should we do? How's the market? Those are all key questions that lets you know that they want your advice. They want your opinion, and they're kind of desperate for help at this point because they're not understanding what's taking so long. So all of those are questions that are essentially saying, close me, like help me. So those are great clues to pay attention to so you can move them into a listing conversation. What are you guys saying to some of these questions?
Well, we can do a CMA to see where your price is sitting on the home. Exposure-wise, through the MLS and all of the agents that are involved, it can just get out to a lot more people than what your sign or your Facebook post is doing for you.
And Gene, I love that. One thing that I would encourage you to do too is if you are going to bring up like how you can help them do a CMA or do like pricing with them, is just say something along the lines of the fact that it's kind of a unique CMA that you're going to bring to the table. Does that make sense? Like, I have this great pricing strategy in my business, and I would love to sit down and show you how I price things through that strategy and just let you compare and contrast. I mean, just something along those lines. Let's get them a little bit more pumped up. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That you're going to be a
Keep
little bit
them involved.
Yeah, exactly.
Get them involved.
Yeah. So any questions about closing them or getting into the listing conversation? Awesome. So, some more closing FSBOs to a listing conversation, just some more dialogue that you guys might be faced with in the field. So the first one is value for value dialogue. So when a FSBO asks, so why are you doing this? What's in it for you? What are you guys saying to that?
Money.
Money.
They know why you're calling.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
be
Try to do
Gotta
the
put
win-win.
food on the table.
The win-win
Kyle,
thing.
try to get the win-win. Is that what
Yeah,
you
I
said?
try to do the, hey, you know, obviously I am not embarrassed to say that I do this for a living and do it for a profit. But if we can keep your net the same or close to it, and you don't have yourself, you know, answering phone calls from people wanting to trade you their car and 10 grand cash and owner financing, you know, this can be a win-win.
Yeah, I love that response. Because again, they, like you and Brandon were saying, you guys, like, they already know that you're there for the potential profit. However, I think what most just clients in general today, not just necessarily FSBOs, but just anybody that you're interacting with on that level, you know, just the fact that you're there to help and that you want to help them. And it can even be something along the lines of, you know, like you said, Kyle, I'm not embarrassed. You know, I do this for a living, but I take it really seriously. And I get a lot of pride from helping people, even if they don't use me as an agent, help them at least try to get their home sold, because I know what it's like, especially in a market today. Things can get really hard. So I'm just here to help. And a lot of times that can make a difference or something along those lines. What about working FSBOs as a buyer? So example could be, after the sale of your home, will you be staying in the area? What's your plans after you sell your house? How can I help you? Can I hook you up with an agent if you're moving out of the area? I got tons of contacts. I mean, just anything like that to offer that next stage could also be a win-win for you as far as getting into a working relationship with them. Any comments on working them as a buyer? Anybody had tried anything different or had different dialogue? That's okay. I'm just, you know, brainstorming with you guys. So that's kind of how I would do that one. And then lastly, just real estate fee or commission. So an example that you could be faced with or something like it. Are you willing to pay me commission if I bring you a buyer? Are you guys asking that question? Does it sound like that, or is it different?
For sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now I've already got them that they're, you know, I mean, most of the time, I mean, at least for me, the for sale by owners have not been, I think the biggest for sale by owner was 289, and that was huge. So most of the time it's not very much. And so if you can get them to say, yeah, I'll give you, you know, I'll give you 3 grand. If it's 100 grand, I'll give you 3 grand. Okay. So we're only 3 grand off from us working together from here on out. What's, you know, I don't think your house would be overpriced if we went up $1,500 or 2 grand or whatever. Is it worth $1,000 to you, so that you don't have to take those calls, and so that I represent you and keep you from getting sued?
Absolutely. Yeah, those are great. I love it. All right, let's look at some more examples. So the book does a great job of providing some examples that you can use with dialogue too. So what I love about this, like I said, is it's all kind of new material. It also suggests that you can take the same practice dialogue and incorporate it into video, which is huge right now. I would do, if I was an agent, I would do videos a lot if I could, because it saves time more than anything. And you can reuse them. So here's some more examples of just, those thank yous or follow-up videos after you've had those initial steps or those initial meetings when you're bringing them something. You just want to kind of summarize the main point of, the meeting or what you were trying to help them with, or just thanking them for their time. Also, don't be afraid to include like calls to action. Just contact me if you have any questions, or I'm trying to think of a really good call to action. My brain is not working on that, but if you guys know what I'm talking about. Any videos that are recorded can be sent directly to your sphere audience as well via email or social media. So anytime you're doing a video for a FSBO, you can incorporate that and use it everywhere too. So why do video? There's a lot of great reasons to do video. It's an extremely powerful tool. The average video today is outperforming the non-video message. I mean, to be honest, but it humanizes yourself. It puts a face with a name too. It creates relatability. You can establish credibility as well. And then it shows kind of that your firsthand display of just your character, who you are, your knowledge, your expertise. You can also deliver some experiences that kind of stand out from the crowd. Just being able to project yourself or utilize your tones or body movements can make a better impact. And then finally, it just strengthens relationships and allows you to build new ones. This happened to me yesterday. I've been doing those opportunity tips for our Facebook page, and I've had probably 3 people that I don't know reach out to me to sell or list their property. And I've also had people come out of the woodwork that's like, hey, I know you, you're the girl on Facebook, and I got questions about just that video that you did, or I want to get with you to talk about, podcasting or whatever. So I'm just telling you, if it's working for me and I'm not even really trying, it's definitely going to work for you guys. So, and then finally, they do some really good video scripts too. And we've never really had video scripts. So I definitely would take the time to look at these. And I like how in the red, it gives you kind of like your hook attention grabber. It also shows you where you're delivering that message and establishing yourself, and then your call to action and your friendly close. So all of these are good. Again, we don't want to be robotic though. We want to take these, make them our own, so don't be afraid to switch up some of the wordage. But definitely try it. I would try it. And I think that a lot of your for sale by owners particularly will appreciate it, because I don't think anybody else is doing it. I really don't. So I just put a couple of these on here. Again, they're in the book. Lots of really good stuff though. The comprehensive questions and advanced dialogue. This I just wanted to keep in here for you guys to talk about how you shouldn't be afraid to use more advanced dialogue as well. And the whole point of the advanced dialogue is going back to what I said earlier, is there's just a lot of power in asking lots of questions so that you can uncover more of their needs and bring more value. So here's just some really good lists of questions that you can have in your toolbox that you can keep asking these people to hopefully identify more of their needs. And then lastly, like I said, I'm going to shoot you guys a follow-up email as soon as we're done here, but be sure to check out these additional books that are with the workbook. These are all of those workbooks that I talked about that you are going to physically hand these people. So you can take them, make them your own again, but they're just really good. I mean, I think you guys will really like them. So there's 100 ways to sell your home fast and for more money. There's the follow-up about money, just a guidebook to help sellers understand the financial side. And then there's also like a checklist one. So a guide list full of checklists for them to just consider when going through the process themselves. And again, consider doing those with video too. Like hold one up, kind of flip through it. Like, hey, do a little whiteboard with their name on it. Like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like watch this video. I want to send you this guidebook. I think you could really use it. Those are all just great ways to go about doing that. So do you guys have any questions? Sorry, I was kind of going fast, but like I said, I wanted you guys to see kind of the new dialogue, the new books.
No, thank you very much.
I like the new, so that these 3 books are actual, we're able to hand them out.
Yeah. Like I said, I'll send them to you. They're at the back of the new FSBO workbook that in the classes, but just check them out. Don't be afraid, like I said, to hand them like the physical book. I personally would just try to kind of recreate it in Word a little bit or something, so it doesn't like, you know, say momentum at the bottom or whatever.
Yeah.
But, yeah, definitely.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Thank you, Galen.
Hey, no problem, guys. I hope you have a great day, and let me know if you need anything.
Yep. Take care.
Take care.
Yep.
Take care.